The rain cuts through the night as the storm descends upon the small town. Thor, the German shepherd, tugs on the leash, his heart racing, sniffing out something strange. Lightning rips across the sky, casting flashes of light into the darkness. Lucas feels the icy breath on his face, but trusts the dog's instinct, which growls and persists. The silence of the early morning is too heavy to be just another storm. Within a few steps, a man and a dog realize that the storm is bringing a cry for help. Thor slowed his pace, but his gaze remained steady, as if the storm were conversing with his soul. Lucas, a young paramedic, adjusted his soaked coat while the dog walked beside him, always alert. Their routine was silent, marked by short calls and long nights. Even so, this silence felt different, almost a warning. Lucas carried the weight of recently losing his mother in his heart, and every night he tried to find peace at work. Thor became his family when everything seemed too dark. The dog entered Lucas's life as a fragile puppy, found alone after another devastating storm. Since then, the bond between them has grown with the strength of destiny. Lucas spoke little, but Thor seemed to understand every trembling breath, every shadow that crossed his mind. Together, they learned to transform darkness into hope. The loyalty between the two was as natural as the rain that was falling now. It was as if one protected the other's soul. As they walked to check the flooded streets, Lucas felt the weariness weighing on his legs. It was a long night, and the sleeping city seemed to hide stories known only to the wind. Thor sniffed the air, restless, driven by the instinct of a hero. The streetlights flickered, casting shadows that danced on the wet ground. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to stay focused, but his heart knew that something bigger was approaching. Thor stopped suddenly, his body rigid, ears perked up. Lucas felt the air change, as if the silence carried an urgent plea. He bent down, petted the dog, and whispered something to comfort him, but the animal didn't look away. The rescue instinct pulsed strongly in the German shepherd's chest. Lucas noticed the tension in his companion's muscles and understood the storm wasn't the only danger that night. That's where the real story began. Thor took a few steps forward, guided by a scent only a dog could recognize. The cold air revealed a metallic trail mixed with the rain, something that made his heart race. Lucas felt the firm tug on the leash and realized it wasn't ordinary restlessness. The silence of the street seemed to hold the breath of everything around. The storm raged in the distance, but Thor only heard what was close, and what he heard cried out for rescue. The dog sniffed the ground, making short circles, its paws marking shallow puddles, while the dim light from the lamppost reflected in its eyes. Lucas looked around, but saw nothing but shadows and darkness trembling with rain. Still, he trusted, as he always did. Thor raised his head, staring intently at an old house at the top of the street. It was a look that said, "Come." Lucas's soul felt a different kind of chill. Faith in the dog's instinct grew like a whisper within him. The house seemed abandoned, but Thor didn't hesitate. The dog pulled harder, as if someone were calling him from inside. Lucas tried to understand exactly what the animal perceived: sound, smell, movement, but everything was too quiet. His heart beat fast, keeping pace with the dog's rhythm. He felt the strange sensation that they were being guided by something beyond logic. The storm intensified, but nothing would stop Thor from following. As they approached, the wind carried an almost imperceptible whimper. Lucas stopped, his heart pounding, trying to distinguish if it was human or just the creaking of the old door. Thor growled softly, protectively, but without aggression, just pure alertness. Hope and doubt mingled within Lucas. He knew the dog never gave false alarms, but why there? The silence demanded an answer. Thor placed his paws on the door, pressing lightly as if asking permission to enter. Lucas felt the weight of the choice. Respect protocol or follow the dog's heart and instincts. The light flickered, casting a quick flash that revealed something on the floor. A fallen cane, partially submerged in rainwater. Lucas's soul stirred. Someone's protection was at stake. The fate of that night would change right there. Thor barked only once, but it was a bark that carried urgency and compassion. Lucas realized it wasn't a warning of danger, but a cry for help. He carefully pushed the door open, and it creaked open, releasing a smell of damp wood. The darkness inside seemed denser than the darkness outside. The dog went in first, breathing deeply, guided by something invisible. Lucas followed right behind, his heart racing. Inside the room, the silence was heavy with fear. The storm made the windows tremble, but inside, the sound was muffled, almost sacred. Thor walked slowly, sniffing the air, following a trail that humans would never perceive. Lucas turned on his flashlight and swept the room, revealing old furniture, old photos, and dust suspended in the air. Something had happened there, and not long ago. Tension gripped them both. The dog stopped suddenly beside an overturned armchair. Lucas shone a light on the spot and saw strange marks on the floor, light scratches, as if someone had tried to brace themselves while falling. His heart tightened. He called, his voice trembling, but no answer came. Thor pressed his nose against the carpet, took a deep breath, and looked up, indicating he needed to go deeper into the house. The storm was still raging outside, but the real drama was inside. They walked down a narrow corridor where the air was heavy and cold. Lucas felt the dog's breath was short, as if the house held secrets. Thor seemed guided by pure loyalty and instinct. The sound of rain echoed in the distance, but there was something else, an irregular rhythm, perhaps a weak beating of the chest. Lucas didn't know if it was imagination or reality, but the dog confirmed it with a slight wag of his tail, as if to say, "Keep going." With each step, the mystery deepened. The light flickered on the peeling walls, creating shadows that seemed to move. Thor stopped before a half-open door, his breathing heavy, his gaze fixed. Lucas gripped the flashlight tightly, feeling his soul vibrate with a mixture of fear and hope. This was the point of no return. If he opened that door, perhaps he would find the reason for the dog's urgency. The wind blew hard, making the house groan as if it were alive. Thor nudged the door and took a step back, making room for Lucas. The young paramedic swallowed hard and pushed the door open slowly. The soft creak echoed like a warning. The light revealed a small, unmade bed and blankets on the floor, but what really caught his attention was a thread of fabric dragging into the dark corner. Hope turned to pure tension. Thor ran to the corner and barked softly, as if trying to call someone from the darkness. Lucas knelt down and saw a trembling hand emerging from behind a fallen dresser. His heart almost stopped. He brought the flashlight closer and found an elderly woman, pale, breathing with difficulty. The storm had knocked down part of the wall, and she was trapped there, unable to call for help. Thor lay down beside her as if promising total protection. Shock gripped Lucas for a few seconds. The dog had sensed everything, the fear, the fragility, the loneliness of that woman. He held her hand and asked her to stay calm, saying that rescue had arrived. Thor kept a watchful eye, analyzing each of her weak breaths. It was as if his soul was telling him that there was still hope. Lucas knew he needed to act fast, but he also knew that this miracle had begun with the dog's instinct. The storm seemed to roar even louder, as if trying to prevent rescue. Lucas assessed the elderly woman and realized she showed signs of hypothermia and extreme weakness. Time was short. Thor laid his snout on her hand, transmitting warmth and peace. Lucas felt tears in his eyes at the sight. It was pure love, boundless loyalty. He called on the radio for urgent reinforcements, but communication was unstable due to the storm. The elderly woman opened her eyes for a moment, looking at Thor as if she recognized an angel. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The weakness was profound, and each breath felt like an effort. Lucas squeezed her hand and said she was no longer alone. Thor, with the sensitivity of a protective puppy, moved even closer, keeping her conscious. Lucas knew the dog had found that woman before it was too late, and that would change everything. Thor remained lying next to the elderly woman while Lucas assessed every detail around them. The storm made the house tremble, but inside, time seemed to stand still. He analyzed the position of the dresser, the fallen furniture, the path of the cane to the floor. Nothing indicated a crime, but everything pointed to abandonment and profound loneliness. Lucas's heart tightened as he imagined how long she had been trapped there, unable to breathe easily. The dog looked at him as if to ask, "Do you believe me now?" Lucas spoke on the radio again, asking for support, but the signal was failing. The voice came out choppy, as if the storm itself was swallowing the words. He knew he couldn't wait to initiate the rescue. Carefully, he moved the dresser just enough to free the lady's frail legs. Thor stayed close, shielding her head with his body and blocking the wind from coming in. The dog's loyalty seemed to build an invisible wall between her and the darkness. When she finally managed to get in touch with the call center, the response came with a lot of surprise. There were no registered calls from that region. No one had asked for help. "Why did you go into this house, Lucas?" they asked. He looked at Thor and replied, without hesitation, that he had been guided by the dog. On the other end of the line, the silence weighed heavily, revealing doubt. Trusting a dog that much seemed excessive to those who didn't witness the scene. The firefighters arrived minutes later, lights cutting through the rain, the sound of sirens breaking the silence. Outside, neighbors began to appear at their windows, curious. Some murmured that the house had been empty for days. Others said that the lady lived alone. No one was sure what was true. Thor watched everything intently, as if each glance were a question. Lucas felt the weight of responsibility, but his faith in the dog's instincts kept him calm. One of the firefighters approached, frowning as he saw the broken door. "You weren't authorized to enter here," he commented curtly. Lucas explained about Thor's persistent barking, the smell, the strange silence. The man looked at the dog and shook his head skeptically. For him, it was just luck amidst the storm, nothing to do with destiny. But Lucas knew deep down that it wasn't just that. While they were carrying the woman to the ambulance, someone on the sidewalk murmured that she was difficult. They said she didn't like visitors, hardly spoke to anyone, and lived locked away. Some even claimed she was rich, others that she only kept memories and old photos. No one truly knew her soul. They only created stories in silence. Thor walked alongside the stretcher, keeping his gaze fixed on it. It was as if the dog had taken on the role of the only family member at that moment. Inside the ambulance, the space seemed too small for so much tension. Lucas checked vital signs, counting each of the woman's fragile breaths. Thor traveled alongside, quiet, but with his eyes gleaming in the darkness. With each jolt, he leaned forward a little more, as if he wanted to protect her body. Lucas spoke in a calm voice, explaining that she was safe, that she was no longer alone. For a second, he saw tears mingling with the rain on her wrinkled face. In the hospital, the white lights cut through the darkness of the early morning. The medical team received the elderly woman efficiently, but also with curiosity. "Who is this patient?" they asked, leafing through blank papers. Lucas replied that he didn't yet know her name, only that he had rescued her. When she mentioned that it was the dog who found her, some smiled in disbelief. For many people, it seemed more like a nice story than a fact. Thor sat in the hallway, watching the emergency room door close. The silence there was different from that at home. It was a silence filled with machines and lights. Lucas approached and patted the dog on the head, thanking him in a low voice. His heart was filled with gratitude, but also with worry. What if they said he exaggerated, that he put his job at risk? Even so, Lucas's soul didn't regret following its canine instinct. Some time later, a doctor came out of the room, adjusting her mask. She said the woman had arrived in critical condition, with low blood pressure and hypothermia. If I had stayed there for another hour, I might not have survived, she said seriously. Lucas felt his legs tremble when he heard that. Thor pricked up his ears, as if he understood every word. At that moment, the dog was already a hero, even if few recognized it. The doctor looked at Thor curiously and asked again how they had found her. Lucas repeated the story, detailing the storm, the smell, the barking, the cane at the door. She took a deep breath, with a half-smile of someone unsure if she believed it. "Sometimes we need a little faith," he commented. Thor tilted his head, as if to answer with his gaze. But on the other side, some employees were still whispering, doubting. In the following days, the story began to circulate through the corridors. Some said the dog had saved a stranger, others called it mere coincidence. For some, it was a miracle. For others, a coincidence fueled by emotion. Lucas listened to everything in silence, without arguing. He knew what he had seen in Thor's eyes that night. I knew that rescue instinct wasn't just a fluke. When they finally obtained the patient's information, they discovered her name, Donna Esther. No children, no husband, no registered close family. Her past seemed shrouded in darkness and oblivion. Few medical records, few visits, few calls. A whole life summed up in a few cold lines of a report. Thor, however, treated that woman as if she were his own long-lost mother. One day, they allowed Lucas to enter the room with the dog, but only for a few minutes. Donna Esther was more awake, her eyes still tired, but with a new sparkle. When she saw Thor, discreet tears welled up in her eyes. She reached out with a trembling hand and gently touched the dog's snout. In that simple gesture, something profound connected between the three of them. It was as if love, gratitude, and hope filled all the space. She whispered that she thought she would die alone in that cold house. He said that for many years he had lived in silence, waiting only for the end, but when she heard footsteps and felt the dog's warm touch, she had faith again. Her breathing seemed lighter as she petted the animal. Lucas listened in silence, feeling his heart soften. Thor, attentive, seemed to guard each word like a sacred secret. Days later, the bureaucratic discussions began. Social workers wanted to know who would cover the expenses and who would be the designated contact person. Some suggested sending her to a shelter once she was discharged from the hospital. Others said that a nursing home would be better, far from that isolated house. No one mentioned feelings, only forms. Whenever he could, Thor would position himself near the bedroom door, acting as a guardian. One afternoon, while Lucas was filling out paperwork, he overheard a snide comment. "That dog should stay out of the hospital. It could disturb the patients," someone said. Another person added, "Soon they'll be saying that he's the one who chooses who lives and who dies." Lucas felt his blood boil, but he took a deep breath. I knew that not everyone understood that kind of loyalty. Even so, doubt began to creep into his own mind for a moment. That same night, something strange happened. Thor, who was usually quiet, stood up abruptly in the hallway. His gaze was fixed on the door of Donna Esther's room, his ears pricked up. He began pacing in circles, restless like a puppy on high alert. Lucas tried to calm him down, but the dog ignored his hand, focused on something beyond the wall. The air suddenly seemed heavy, like before the worst part of the storm. When the monitors inside the room triggered an alarm, everyone ran. Donna Esther had suffered a sudden worsening of her condition. Her breathing was labored, and her heart was irregular. The medical team rushed in, drawn by flashing lights and high-pitched sounds. Thor whimpered softly, pressing his body against the closed door. Some looked at the dog with irritation, seeing only extra noise. But Lucas realized he sensed it before the machines did. After stabilizing the patient, a doctor left, sweating but relieved. He said it was a close call, that minutes would have made a huge difference. Lucas looked at Thor and remembered the exact moment the dog became restless. The line between science and instinct seemed to be getting thinner and thinner there. Even so, there were still those who said it was all a coincidence. Doubt spread through the corridors like the echo of a distant storm. Amidst this tension, Donna Esther asked for something unexpected. She wanted to speak with a lawyer and, if possible, with the hospital director. Lucas heard the request and felt his heart race, without understanding. Why would someone so frail think about documents when they're so exhausted? Thor, beside the bed, simply breathed slowly, radiating peace. There was a secret approaching, silent, ready to change destinies. When the lawyer arrived, he was carrying a small briefcase worn with age. Donna Esther asked him to come closer, while Thor, attentive, observed every gesture. Lucas remained in the corner of the room, trying to respect the moment, but unable to hide his curiosity. The elderly woman took a deep breath, drawing strength from the little light that streamed through the window. Her heart seemed to beat with effort, but her gaze showed clarity. There, the silence carried the weight of a truth about to be revealed. She asked the lawyer to open the envelope, her trembling hands pointing to the clasp. He hesitated when he noticed Lucas's gaze and the dog's presence, as if the revelation were too intimate. But the lady insisted, saying that Thor and Lucas were an essential part of that story. Upon opening the paper, an old document appeared with a faded signature. It was an unofficial will, something written years before and kept as a last resort. The storm was merely the push that brought everything to light. Mrs. Esther explained that she had lost her entire family over the years, first the husband, then the only son, both taken by separate accidents. She had lived amidst memories and silence, carrying her own soul as both weight and shelter. He never had the courage to start over, but he also never gave up completely. The love she had lost seemed to have been buried along with time, until the presence of that dog awakened something she thought was dead. With difficulty, she raised her hand and touched Thor's snout. He said that when he entered the house, he felt as if the light had begun to shine through the cracks in his life again. It wasn't just a rescue, it was a discreet miracle, born of instinct. That's why he called the lawyer. He wanted to change the course of his own story, and not just hers. Lucas felt his breath catch in his throat, filled with fear and anticipation at the same time. The lawyer turned the page and revealed a second, more recent one. There was a clear decision. She wanted to leave her possessions, her small house, savings, old land, to someone who represented hope. For the person who gave me back my life when I no longer expected anything. Her gaze fixed on Lucas, then on Thor. The tears came softly, like light rain after a storm, and the final revelation trembled in his voice. I want to leave everything to the two of you. The words came out fragile yet precise, as if they carried years of guarded silence. Lucas felt the world spinning, unable to find his voice. My heart was pounding, torn between gratitude and disbelief. He shook his head, saying it wasn't necessary, that he was only doing his duty. But Donna Esther insisted it wasn't duty, it was destiny intertwined with loyalty and love. The doctor entered the room shortly after. Surprised by the scene, she realized that something profound had happened there. He cautiously asked if the patient needed rest, but Donna Esther denied it. I wanted to finish everything before the weakness returned. Thor moved even closer, as if he understood the urgency. The silence that enveloped the room seemed to protect that decision. The lawyer presented a new document, prepared in haste. It was an up-to-date, simple but legally valid record. Lucas watched everything, unsure how to react, feeling his soul tremble with emotion. Thor rested his head in the old woman's lap, as if he too were signing that fate. The elderly woman asked Lucas to hold her hand while she signed. His hand was trembling as much as hers. When the signing was finished, she smiled, a small smile, but full of peace. It was as if years of weight had been lifted from her heart. "You gave me hope again," he murmured. The words sounded like a prayer, like a miracle that the storm had hidden. Lucas lowered his head, trying to hold back tears. Thor remained motionless, a silent guardian of that sacred moment. But the climax was not over yet. The doctor noticed something strange on the patient's monitor. His heart rate was fluctuating irregularly, alarmingly. She asked everyone to take a step back while she assessed the signs. The storm outside roared even louder, as if echoing her own heart. Thor stood up slowly, his protective instinct activated. Suddenly, the monitor beeped more intensely. The doctor called for immediate backup, and the team rushed in. Lucas felt his breath catch as he held the old woman's hand. Her heart seemed to be fighting against the inner darkness. Thor whimpered, trying to climb onto the stretcher as if he wanted to bring the light back. Time seemed suspended between faith and fear. The team tried to stabilize Donna Esther by adjusting her oxygen and medication. The lawyer stepped back to the corner, perplexed. Lucas repeated gentle words. "You're not alone. We're here." Thor nuzzled his nose against her leg, almost as if saying goodbye or promising something. The soul of the entire room seemed to tremble. The struggle for survival became the true focus of that story. After several minutes, the rhythm on the monitor began to stabilize. The doctor sighed with relief, saying that they had almost lost her. Lucas felt tears falling uncontrollably, his heart heavy and light at the same time. Thor rested his head on the edge of the bed, as if exhaling gratitude. The old woman opened her eyes, weak but alive, and she whispered something so soft that only Thor seemed to hear it. She asked Lucas to come closer and repeated in an almost faint voice, "My life has not been in vain. Destiny brought you to me." He squeezed her hand, feeling it cold but firm. The storm was beginning to subside outside, as if giving way to the calm within. The dog tilted its head, breathing along with hers. A silent miracle had just occurred. But there was still one last detail. The doctor found a small object wrapped in cloth in the elderly woman's pocket. It was an old medallion with the image of a mother holding a puppy. She asked Lucas to open it. Inside, there was an almost faded inscription, "Light always finds those who are not afraid of the darkness." The fate seemed sealed in that message. Lucas realized that the gift wasn't just symbolic, it was a passage of faith. Thor touched the medallion with his nose, as if recognizing something essential. The old woman smiled again, discreet tears streaming down her face. It was the last gesture of love before the final delivery. A gentle farewell, but full of meaning. The climax revealed that the true gift was not material. Donna Esther asked them to take care of each other, to never lose hope. He said that the two of them saved his soul even before they saved his life. Lucas cried openly, without shame. Thor leaned against the bed, firm, immense in his loyalty. The storm was dying down outside, leaving only dampness and dim light. The end of that truth was about to be completed. As the sun began to rise, illuminating the room with golden light, she shook Lucas's hand one last time. Her breathing slowed peacefully, without pain, without darkness. Thor licked his hand, a gesture of pure farewell. The doctor lowered her head in respect. That woman's destiny found its rest. When Donna Esther closed her eyes, a gentle peace filled the room. Lucas stood still, feeling the weight of that moment pierce his soul. Thor remained motionless, as if guarding her last breath. There was silence, but not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of surrender. The storm had passed, leaving light where there had once been darkness. Lucas knew in his heart that woman had left accompanied. The following days were marked by formal procedures, documents, signatures, confirmations, endless phone calls. But amidst the bureaucracy, something unexpected began circulating through the hospital. The story of the dog that saved the elderly woman during the storm went viral. Some called it a miracle, others destiny, others simply instinct. But everyone, without exception, spoke respectfully. The hospital director asked to speak with Lucas. He mentioned that the whole city was talking about the rescue. There were those who wished to officially honor Thor. Lucas listened to everything with humility, still processing the loss. But Thor remained calm, as if he understood that his mission went beyond applause. The dog's loyalty wasn't about seeking recognition, it was about protecting. Shortly after, the lawyer returned with the final version of the will. The inheritance was real. The house, the land, the savings accumulated throughout life. Everything is destined for Lucas and Thor, as per their explicit wish. Lucas felt his heart tighten, torn between gratitude and sadness. He had never imagined receiving something like that, especially from someone he had known for such a short time. But somehow, I felt that this connection was ancient, spiritual. The house underwent inspection before being cleared for occupancy. Thor walked calmly through the rooms, sniffing out hidden memories. Lucas opened the windows, letting the light in, as if a new life were beginning there. The air smelled of history and of hope reborn. He found old photos, saved letters, small objects that told stories of decades of solitude. Every detail seemed to demand respect and care. But something else caught our attention even more. In a hidden drawer, Lucas found a small notebook. The fragile handwriting revealed Donna Esther's thoughts from her final years. She wrote about the silence of the house, about longing, about internal storms that no one saw. But on the last page, there was a passage dedicated to the dog of light. Dated days before the rescue, it mentioned recurring dreams about a dog coming to save her. Lucas felt a tingle on his skin. Thor approached the notebook and gently touched it with his nose. It was as if he recognized something indescribable, something beyond logic. Lucas realized that this story had deeper roots. Perhaps it was her faith that called. Perhaps it was Thor's instinct that answered. Perhaps the two paths crossed because they needed each other. Weeks passed, and the city decided to honor Thor in a public square. A small event was organized, bringing together neighbors, firefighters, doctors, and curious onlookers. The story of the dog that saved the elderly woman during the storm became local news. Lucas went up onto the stage simply holding the guide rope. Thor, calm and relaxed, received affection from children and adults. He was a silent hero, but a real hero. In his speech, Lucas spoke very little. He said that Thor didn't just save a life, he saved a destiny. He spoke about love, loyalty, and the light a dog can bring even on the darkest days. People listened in silence, some with discreet tears. The story touched hearts that didn't even know they needed to be touched. Thor remained seated, humble, observing the crowd with a calm gaze. After the event, something even more unexpected happened. A woman approached and revealed that she had been a distant friend of Donna Esther. She told stories about the elderly woman's youth, about lost dreams, about a life full of losses. He said that Esther feared dying alone and leaving nothing real behind. When she heard the news, she felt that her friend's heart had finally found peace. Thor leaned against the woman's leg, as if to comfort the memory as well. Lucas and Thor's new routine began to take shape. The house became a cozy home, with soft light during the day and comfortable silence at night. Thor had space to run, rest, and observe the world from the balcony. Lucas found a place of peace for his own soul in that spot. It was as if Donna Esther had left behind more than just possessions. It left a purpose. Lucas began visiting the hospital more frequently. Some patients asked to see the dog hero. Thor entered the wards calmly and gently. The effect was always the same: smiles, tears, hope. The dog's presence seemed to ignite something deep within each person. It was as if he carried the light of someone who now lived through him. One day, while returning home after a long shift, Lucas stopped at the entrance. The sunset illuminated the old facade with golden hues. Thor sat down beside him, watching the horizon. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling his heart lighten. He realized that the storm that had started it all had ended within him as well. The peace he had been searching for had finally arrived. Every night, Thor lay near the bedroom door like a silent guardian, not out of fear but out of loyalty. Lucas watched the dog and wondered how many more lives would be touched by that pure instinct. The world seemed a little less dark with him around. The house seemed less empty, and Lucas's soul seemed less alone. Over time, the medallion found in Donna Esther's pocket became a symbol. Lucas hung it in the living room, in a well-lit corner. Thor always glanced at him as he passed by, as if he recognized the message. Light always finds those who are not afraid of darkness. It was a truth that now guided them both, a simple phrase, yet as profound as destiny. One morning during a walk, a child pointed at Thor and said, "He's the dog that saves people." Lucas smiled, kneeling beside the little boy. He said that Thor saved not only people, but also hearts. The child petted the German shepherd, who closed his eyes in peace. It was yet another moment etched into the dog's silent memory. Life went on, with routine, sun, rain, and precious moments, but nothing could erase the memory of that initial storm. She was the turning point, the meeting of three destinies. Thor had found a lost soul, Lucas had found his purpose, and Donna Esther had found the light she had always sought. On a calm night, Lucas sat on the porch while Thor rested beside him. He looked at the stars and gave thanks silently. The storm has passed, but it left hope in its place. The dog raised its head, as if it heard something in the wind. It was all peace, just peace, and that was enough. Sometimes life brings together paths that should never have crossed, but who recognize each other by the light they carry. A loyal dog, a wounded man, and a forgotten woman showed that hope can be reborn even in the worst storm. Loyalty is not a gesture. It is destiny that protects the heart. And when everything seems silent, there is always a soul calling for help. Thor listened. Lucas believed. Esther found peace, and the whole city learned that miracles don't shout. They arrive in the form of pause, light, and love. If this story touched you, leave a paw print in the comments.